Hi. 4.5 years ago, I was hit in the head by a rose bush outside, and it was a big, tall, probably about 7 feet tall, 8 feet tall, and it swatted me in the head twice on the right side of my head, and the wind was blowing about 50 miles an hour, and I live in Kansas, so, you know, Wizard of Oz, that's basically what that day was like. So after I got swatted in the head with the branch, I came in, looked in the mirror, couldn't see any thorns, nothing. So basically I put a hat on, went back outside, and that was that. Well, 6 months later, I started noticing that I had this itching and this bump on the back of my head, back here, on the crown of my head. And basically, I kept itching and it kept bothering me, and so eventually I realized that I had thorns coming out of my head. So I itched and picked these thorns out, and basically I just, I just thought, well, I'll just keep digging them out. Eventually they'll dig them all out. Well, I basically have had thorns on this side of my head for the last 4.5 years in different spots, and it takes forever for these thorns to work their way out. So after about 2 years of doing this, I also realized that I was getting thorns around my fingers. So first, the thorns from my head. This is what they look like here. Just really attractive, big chunks, you see. So these are the thorns that I've picked out of my head for the last 4 years, or actually just for the last 2 years that I collected. And then I realized that my fingers also were getting areas around them, like right around where, like the tweezers of my fingers, that I was getting these bulging areas around them. And I realized that the thorns from my head were getting embedded into my fingers, these two on my right and my left hand, and also my thumbs. So that basically was another problem that I was starting to have, because these were like little razor blades coming out of my head going into my fingers. And this is what I collected out of my fingers. So you see, they look similar to the ones that I got from my head. These are the ones from my fingers that I clipped out, and they basically are just little razor blades, you see. They're all different shapes, but they look like thorns. So those were from my fingers, and these are from my head. And so, yeah, it basically is just been a huge problem. You see that big piece there? I mean, these have just been embedded in my head. So, after digging these out, I hadn't collected these for, the first couple of years, and so my daughter moved home, and after doing this for 2 years and just sticking them on a label, not collecting them like you just saw, she forced me to go to the doctor. So she first took me to a doctor that I'd never been to, that was a general practitioner, and she looked at my head, and this is a spot that I had when I went to the doctor, and I saw her. You see right between my fingers there. If I can show you. And it's kind of a triangular shape that these thorns are. Sometimes diamond, sometimes triangular. But they basically come out, and after I pick them out, they look like this. And then they go into my fingers, and they look like this. So, yeah, I went to the doctor, and after looking at my head for 20 seconds, this doctor basically, she told me she didn't believe me, and she gave me some Seroquel, which, sorry, right there. Seroquel, 150 milligram, and also 100 milligram. I knew the lady 20 seconds, seriously, maybe 30. And this medication, free samples, 2 boxes each. This is for schizophrenia, which, you know, I guess maybe she thought I was imagining those thorns. So anyway, I then called the biology department at Wichita State, and they said they would look at them, so I took them out. The little thorns I had on a sticky, like, label, and left those with her. And she said that she really had never seen anything like it, so she didn't know what to tell me. She didn't know who to tell me to go to. So that was in March of 2011. So after that, I gave up. I decided, you know, I'd just leave them in my head. And then I decided to go to a dermatologist, and the dermatologist took 3 weeks to get into. And I went in, and she did a biopsy of my head here, took a sample, and I told her that they were thorns, and I offered to give her the rose bush that hit me in the head so she could test it at the lab that she sent it to, and she said no, she didn't need that. She didn't really believe that they were roses, apparently. So I ended up calling the lab in Colorado that was doing the biopsy. The girl got in trouble for trying to help me. So long story short, the dermatologist told me that it was foreign matter, that you know, they couldn't really tell me what it was. I know it was thorns, so she didn't have to tell me that, and that going into my fingers was impossible. So I'm not sure why I have all those pieces from my fingers, where they came from, because obviously they came from my head, because they must have been growing out of my fingers otherwise. So then January of 2012, a little less than a year later, I finally decided to go to the emergency room because I started getting another spot on the back of my head, which was just awful. It was painful, and I just wanted to have an x-ray and see if an emergency room could maybe help me. The doctors in the emergency room just laughed at me almost out loud. I took them, the pieces from my head, those pieces there, and they said that that's impossible. They couldn't be thorns because no thorns would stay in my head that long. So that was January 2012. So after that, I was really frustrated, came home, cried. I mean, this is, I've had people tell me I was, you know, my sister tell me I was crazy. I've had just the worst time. So then I went to lunch with a friend of mine about 2 months ago and was telling her about my thorns, and also that I now have thorns growing out of my face, and literally growing out of my knuckles. You see these 2 fingers? They're thorns growing out of there and there. And also inside my mouth, I have thorns that basically are moving my molars up now. They're growing up the root of my tooth, in between the 2 teeth, and up the root of another one. So this is basically the thorns from my fingers that I just showed you, that now I have thorns growing out of my joints. And this piece, this big piece right here, this one, this big piece right here was in my finger, and these were also in my fingers, both of them. So they kind of start out and they're like bulging, and then after they are bulging out for a few weeks or so, then you basically have to just pull the thorns out of my finger. You see that big place there? That was from this big thorn out of my finger. And my finger was throbbing. And these are the